We're now on to our final panel of the day, which is a real, well, it's covering pretty much everything. So obviously decarbonisation, following on from Mark's presentation, and also about the transformation journey and how they interconnect, how technology is driving sustainability. So some really top experts on this panel, as you would expect. It's moderated by Alessandro Pistillo, Director for Digital Strategic Projects, if I can get it right, for BASF. So very, very happy with that, Alessandro, and over to you.
Thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel. Pardon, cloud number 9. So, and definitely a good closing of the event. When we will have the possibility to discuss about decarbonization and the transformation journey of the refinery and downstream chemical industry towards net zero. Obviously, an important matter. No reason to tell it again here. The chemical and the refinery industry is definitely a large emitter of greenhouse gas, but at the same time is also an important enabler for decarbonization. If you think about that, a large portion of the emission globally across all industries coming from transportation on one side, and also chemical manufacturing, and 95% of all manufacturing goods have somehow something to do with chemicals in the end. You can imagine that the industry overall is also part of the solution. It has to be part of the solution. Now, we have here a great lineup of panelists. We will talk about technology, about technology to drive sustainable transformation. And with technology, we mean not just engineering technology and chemical technology, but also digital technology. And I'm really looking forward to have a conversation with all these experts here around. We will start with introduction round first, and I will now follow the sequence that I see on my screen. The first person on my screen is Tim. Would you like to introduce yourself as a first person?
Hi, yeah, so I'm Tim Shire. I head up energy and combustion management at Essar oil refinery in the northwest of the UK. In some of my past life, I worked at KBC as an energy efficiency consultant and also product manager for some of our energy management software. And at Essar at the moment, we have a lot going on. We're one of the phase 1 decarbonised industrial clusters. So we've been selected by the UK government and are trying to get our hydrogen production plant up and running for 2026. So that's been through FEED, looking at the tie-ins now. But in parallel with that, so we've got hydrogen fuel switching going on, but also energy efficiency and electrification, and looking at carbon capture as other means to decarbonise a refinery.
Fantastic. We're all looking forward to hear from your experience very soon then. The next is on my screen, Henk. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I hope you can hear me very well, because I need to utilize my phone for this setup. But my name is Hendrix, Senior Manager Operational Sustainability in SABIC, and our department is working for over 12 years on all kind of sustainability related topics which are impacting the overall operations, but also looking at new growth projects, on developing our engineers and taking the whole field also with a future outlook improvement for going at the end for kind of carbon neutrality. I'm having a lot of experience in different production units, utilities, and project management.
Thank you, Henk. Looking forward to hearing from you as well later. And the next one, though, the floor is for Therese now. Hi, Therese.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Therese Hermann. I'm Director for Global Public Affairs at Topsoe. Topsoe is a leading developer and provider of solutions and technologies to produce essential fuels and chemicals for the future. We have been around for 8 decades, so we have a lot of expertise and knowledge how to produce fuels more efficient. And now we are moving into the green space, so we have a full offering of Power to X and Bio to X solutions for the refinery industry, among others.
Really exciting stuff. So next one is Alan.
Thanks, Alessandro. So I'm Alan Gelder, VP Refining Chemicals and Oils Markets for Wood Mackenzie. So I have a dubious title of Global Downstream Subject Matter Expert, which implies I should know what's going on, but always learning. But what Wood Mackenzie does is provide sort of commercial insights around energy markets and asset valuations. And so what we're looking at, particularly the team I'm working with, is the outlook for sort of oil products, petrochemicals, which assets are the most competitive, sort of market outlook, asset competitiveness. And so we're always trying to keep abreast of how the world is developing and changing and how we're moving towards the energy transition and supporting our clients in doing that. And so if I think of Wood Mackenzie in the more than 15 years I've been there, it's evolved from something that was very upstream focused to something that now is very focused on supporting the energy transition and how the world can move to a lower carbon world. So here to give our thoughts on some of the market perspectives, but really look at the commercial drivers and commercial analysis, because we need activities to be commercially viable to get the investment we need for that transition.
Grateful to have you here, Alan. And the last one then is, last but not least, is obviously here, Vinicius. Happy to have you here.
Hello, happy to be here. I'm Vinicius Branchini. I work for the DSS Plus. DSS Plus was in the past known as DuPont Sustainable Solutions. We are a consulting firm. We've been in the market for nearly 50 years now. And we do three things. We help our clients to protect their people and their operations, transform and sustain the transformation. I'm in charge of our technology ecosystem platform that is called SafetyTech.ai. So anyone interested in knowing more about that, that's the web address of it, SafetyTech.ai. And through this platform, we've been taking digital technologies to these client organizations that are going through different types of operational transformation programs. For me, this conversation is very relevant as we have lots of experience helping organizations to overcome the typical challenge in any transformation. And despite of the topic being connected to engineering technologies or digital technologies, it's also connected to people as well. And I hope to be able to add some insights related to how to take people along in the process of the transformation here. Thank you.
Perfect. So thank you very much. Then I think we can start now, and I would say that a perfect way to start would be to start where you ended your presentation, basically, Alan, earlier today. I mean, you were providing this from your vantage point of Woodmac, an overview of where the refinery industry is heading to. And would you mind to elaborate further on what are the pathways towards net zero that you observe being followed by the industry in recently years, and perhaps focus in particular on challenges that you see lying ahead?
Yeah, just the challenges is probably the easy one. What do we see in pathways? We see many pathways being open and available to reduce the carbon intensity of the refining system. If we think about sort of what's key drivers and what's happening, we see sort of the era of low cost energy is gone. We see significant benefits in improving energy efficiency, and that also reduces carbon emissions. But there's a need to decarbonize refinery operations, and I'm sure Tim will spend a lot talk, and Therese will talk about that in terms of reducing the emissions associated with that transformation, which is what the refining industry does, is transforming crude oil into products people want. And then actually the further transformation in terms of net zero is to decarbonize those products. So we're sort of firmly of the view that the refining industry as a safe, reliable, high standard transformation business will continue to have a role in a net zero world, but what it will be transforming is going to be quite different from its current feedstock, which is virtually exclusively crude oil. So it needs to get into processing more circular feedstocks, agricultural residues, sort of petrochemical wastes, and municipal solid waste. So what the refining system needs to transform needs to change as part of that circularity. So the challenge, and it comes down to arguably the title that we've got for the panel, if it was known and if it was commercially viable now, it would probably be being done now. And that's the challenge, is the technology that needs to be developed and then deployed at scale to make a meaningful impact on the emissions from both the refining industry and also the product that it produces. So we need regulation to support that. We then need a viable business case for the industry to invest to deliver the reductions we see. But the one thing we don't see at the moment is a silver bullet and a single pathway. There's lots of things that need to happen alongside each other to get us to a lower carbon world. Hopefully that's given something that people can then build on as we go through the rest of the panel.
It sounds like a very complex labyrinth of pathways here, and surely here I think that Therese could be a person to help us to sort out more in detail what these pathways can be, and especially taking into account that there is quite a gap between piloting and having things implemented at scale. But let's start first with the pathways, how you see those, Therese. Would you mind be the next?
Sure, thank you. Sure, I will. Thank you very much for having the floor. Well, I totally agree with Alan that there is some low-hanging fruits for refineries to decarbonize. The first and foremost is obviously energy efficiency. Then you can look at carbon capture, which is a pretty expensive and not so developed technology today, but it will be. And then you can change your feedstock. You can use first or second generation of feedstock from bio-based and from different waste streams from the industry and households. So definitely there are some ways where you can both change your plant with energy efficiency and carbon capture reduce your carbon footprint, but you can very much look at what kind of fuels are you producing for the future. And here it's a matter of not only regulation, obviously also the CO2 tax is driving the incentives to change and to retrofit into more sustainable solutions is driving that very much. But you also have to look at the end users and the consumers, you and me, that will consume the fuel for the future. And there's a huge demand for a greener transportation and mode of transportation. So all those drivers in place will be a burning platform for the refineries to change their ways. And finally, of course, you can invest in a complete new plant and a production of synthetic fuels and Power-to-X. This is obviously the most expensive solution to choose, but it's also a solution which is maybe the most promising for the future, because you are out of the dialogue, or you're out of the challenges with with sourcing of biomass and discussion around that, also in a political context. So Power-to-X is very much where the future lie. And here we can provide a lot of solutions, definitely, to reduce the CO2 footprint in the refinery sector. So changing from crude oil to first and second generation of vegetable oil and bio-based feedstock is obviously number one, and number two is changing into Power-to-X. Power-to-X is obviously a way that you can get green hydrogen into your production and replace natural gas, gray hydrogen in the production. But you can also use the Power-to-X to produce future fuels and further refine them into jet fuel. So this is also a very interesting business case for refineries when the demand is there and the willingness to pay for fuels that today are very expensive, but that the economy of scale will take down the prices, or will reduce the prices eventually.
At the end is always as a decision of the consumer or the procurement person, right? Which type of feedstock or raw material or chemical product will be eventually bought or purchased, and willingness to pay is eventually key at the end. We will probably get into that later. I would thank you for your views right now, and my suggestion would be to move now more into a practitioner view. And I think I'm looking here at the screen here of Tim, with Tim on it. And Tim, you are representing a refining company. So would you perhaps give a little bit your perspective? So how Essar is approaching decarbonization right now, and what are the experiences you're making?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's probably better to pick up on let's talk about decarbonizing products to start with. And there's different levels of when you say, oh, we'll get some alternative feedstock, that can mean different things. So we have a partnership, Fulcrum, applying to build a sustainable aviation fuel facility kind of adjacent to us. So they're going to be turning municipal waste into jet. And the integration there is actually just at the blending level. So it doesn't really go through the refinery at all. It goes into blend stock, and that works because when you look at the UK's particular inland diesel and jet balance, we can tolerate that additional additional production, and it works nicely. But I think a kind of note of caution, or a delicate balance that needs to be struck, is we talk about bringing in these new molecules into a demand picture that is gradually declining, so especially gasoline. and there's a risk there, right? We can get a new biofeedstock or power to X, and we can make some new molecules that satisfy some of this demand. But we already had too much supply, and this shiny new thing which is coming in, is that displacing something that I'm making? You know, the refinery is very integrated. We can't necessarily switch off the production of certain products. So I think part of our strategy is very much, well, we need an outlet for hydrocarbon molecules, you know, as the demand drops off and there's more substitution and we want to bring other things in. And I think a big part of how we see Vertex and HyNet evolving is, you know, as we drive energy efficiency, we're going to have more molecules left over that we have been burning as fuel in the past, and we can turn them into hydrogen, capture the carbon, sell the hydrogen as a product, or use the hydrogen, you know, for decarbonisation, to hydrogenate vegetable oil, or whatever. And that's really only going to grow. You know, LPG molecules are going to end up made into hydrogen, and I see a long-term future as more and more of the transport fuels decline. We'll continue to sell chemicals, and more of those molecules that we don't want to burn anymore, or we don't want to burn with CO2 emissions, will get made into hydrogen. So for us, having that outlet for molecules, you know, gives us a degree of freedom then to be able to blend in other things. Obviously, if we then went to biofeedstocks, you know, it could be even carbon negative, because we'd be processing a biofeedstock and capturing the carbon from it and then making a product. So yeah, for us, that's a delicate balance, and it is very specific. What's our local supply and demand balance is what's actually a good thing to substitute, because I think if we're looking for scarce biofeedstock to make something that then just forces us to export a distressed product somewhere else, that's not going to work. We're really looking for the highly synergistic ones, not just at the point of blending, but what's really going to be synergistic throughout our process and is going to keep the balance of the different products and the crews we run all nicely lined up in a hugely moving target.
Yeah, that's definitely a big change, right? So there are big changes ahead in portfolio and in asset management and feedstock purchasing. Thank you very much for sharing your views, Tim. And I think perhaps Henk, from the perspective of SABIC, a large integrated chemical company and petrochemical company, also with strong links with the oil and gas, obviously. It would be great also to have your perspective of around the decarbonization and which kind of pathways and approaches then SABIC is about to follow.
Yes. Well, thank you for the question, and I heard many good things from my peer panelists, and I fully agree with all being said. And what I see, looking back to the past and looking ahead for the future, I see we were doing a lot of improvements on energy, on greenhouse gases, but we are limited ourselves to just go increase our efficiency. Now it's the world changed. Not the companies are not changing, the world is changing. So the companies need to adhere also on that perspective. And we can only do that with a totally new approach. So we cannot go and look, okay, how can we reduce our efficiency? It will not make us carbon neutral at the end. So for doing that, and that is already being said, there is no silver bullet. We cannot approach one direction and then we are there. We cannot only look at carbon capture and that's it. We cannot go only to reuse or use bio-based feedstocks, because there is no market enough in the world to make this happen. Otherwise, we are competing with other items like food and feedstock. I think that the subject about circular economy is already being touched, and that is also one of the key elements of our overall portfolio. So what we are going to produce, it gives us also responsibility to make it happen, to reuse it again, and to create added value for our customers. Because at the end, our customers are most important key or key shareholders who are making our industry happening. What I missed in the previous one was, well, it was power to X. So what's the basis of that? It's of course renewables. We need to have a lot of availability on renewables to make it happen, to go for carbon neutrality, and also creating products with zero footprint, because you need to go for preventing of utilizing more fossil products in the future to make it happen, and even go for negative impact on your overall performance. And also saying that, well, like I mentioned, the consumers are our biggest influencers, directly of course, but also indirect. But they are determining what the governments are going to do. The governments are very important to create the infrastructure to make it happen at the end. But also on investor side, if you are going for new plants, we need to have loans, we need to get the money, and we are going to investors and approach them. And they are being influenced by the public opinion, and also go for more green initiatives in the future. So it's not only what we are doing now, it's also looking at the strategic perspective, how we will improve for the future. And I really think it's also very important that even if we are willing to do that today, we will not succeed in doing this, because a lot of technologies are not being proven yet, at least not on commercial scale. So a lot of technologies are not having a tier level of 9, which is called commercial proven, and that will take almost a decade to come over there. So also from that perspective, we need to look at the OEMs to make some new technologies to support us on that. And it's mostly also a kind of a chicken egg discussion, who is starting this, but we need to close hands and go together this roadmap for carbon neutrality in the future. And also, if you can make feedstock from renewables or from circular products, then we don't need the fuel to make these new feedstocks from other places. So also on that perspective, we can reduce our overall fuel demand to make our products more carbon neutral.
Thank you, Henk. That was a very nice overview of your line of thinking, and a lot of. So I think if I can summarize, also no silver bullet, a number of initiatives which need to be pushed through. Some of these may fail. We're talking about also immature technologies sometimes. So it seems to be quite a challenge for a company to deal with such a complexity and such a level of insecurity. And I don't know, I'm looking at now at Vinicius. I mean, you have a long experience in dealing and managing complex projects in execution from your consulting job. And it would be really great to get your perspective here, some recommendations and what are the success factors that you could point out for dealing with such complexity of transformation.
Thank you, Alessandro. I think I was thinking about something that we all have heard, right? Technology adoption. There is always the cutting edge and the bleeding edge, right, of that process. And I think we have outlined a number of elements that illustrate very clearly the bleeding edge, right? So, and for us, when it comes to actually technology adoption or a process change or we look at this industry, and we feel that compared to all other industries out there, you have reached a level of maturity in the way that you operate and you manage your assets, that in not only when we talk about the efficiency, but also take into account all the process safety, all the asset management, the integrity of the assets, aspects of it. I think this industry could be considered as a benchmark industry when it comes to the way that you've been managing assets throughout the history now. We feel that one important additional challenge to that is that to what extent the adoption of these technologies or ways or process or even the change in the process to achieve that, to what extent these now would surface new risks and new unknown territory for you to be able to manage, not really having too many references, right? So we are here in an environment where the only few references we have are coming from spot initiatives here and there, and perhaps at best some small scale implementation, but not to the extent that we have enough reference that we can really consider that we have a good understanding of the challenge that these new environment can pose. So for me, the new risks or the new way these new operational environment that you are going to have will pose to your organizations is something that needs to be looked into very carefully. And then the other element is a very important aspect of it is what are the new capabilities, right? So what is the new knowledge? What are the new skills? What are the change in the actual workforce knowledge that is required to operate in such a new environment, and with new ways of operating and new ways of producing. So I think these two elements they need to be looked at very carefully. Otherwise, even if there is a big incentive from regulators or a push from regulators, I would say, or a big incentive from shareholders and a big push from the market for this type of new approach, is still these operational challenge they need to be factored in. And I think from what I hear today here, comments that I've got from my colleagues here, I believe that this is still very new territory and unexplored, and all of these, I think I'm adding to your list of concerns and barriers going forward.
Yes, lot of challenges, of course, but also a lot of opportunities for everybody. I think that, and of course, a lot of opportunities also for new entrants in the market. That's obvious as well. Now, focus on the challenges and looking at the way to overcome those. I mean, I was really impressed by one of your slides, Alan, earlier today, displaying that. Yeah, I mean that's what we experienced in the pandemic is somehow probably a preview, a sneak preview of what may happen in the future in terms of oil products demand. You were also talking about a peaking of demand for oil product in, if I remember correctly, 2027. I mean, Therese will be in order to achieve this decarbonization and net zero target. There is a need to shift to other feedstock, and those feedstocks are scarce still. Do you think that the availability of feedstock, of new feedstock, would be capable to match the demand in future years for such feedstocks, even taking into account there will be a decline down the line of oil product demand for energy use? Is there a gap that we need, that we may risk to fall into very soon because of this necessity to decarbonize?
That's a really good question. I mean, our view of oil demand doesn't peak until the mid-2030s, but that's because we're shifting out of energy use and we've got growth in non-energy use. But either way, there's still a significant demand for liquid fuels, because we don't see it's easy to electrify everything. Aviation, marine, heavy duty trucking are hard to electrify. And the challenge we have at the moment, and the Russia-Ukraine crisis has sort of further added to this, is there is insufficient feedstock for what we're currently using for biofuels, because it's sort of vegetable oils. We've got food versus fuel competition, and what there is very limited availability of now are sort of the lower carbon intensity feedstocks that are being processed that fit with Annex 9, that can be utilized into sort of current technology. So there is a risk that, and you see it with the fossil industry now at the moment, that demand outpaces supply, in which case what you then end up with is high prices or limited availability. It's something that for sort of a part of Woodmac's journey as in providing insights on the energy value chain, one of the things that we're now starting to look at and research and are building out is a view on the availability of agricultural inputs, so the feedstocks, the residues, because since we have a very clear view and framework and methodology for the crude oil world. We've developed that for wind and solar, but now we need to build that for the liquid renewables. If it's just simply vegetable oils, there's simply not enough, and then we're compounding the problem from sort of a high carbon feedstock to a low carbon feedstock if there is insufficient of that feedstock available, along with what sort of Henk has already mentioned and Therese has about the technologies not being fully mature on converting those feedstocks. So there's still lots to do, and if it was clear and obvious what the answer was, everybody would be doing it. But that's the challenge, is the huge uncertainty of what success looks like. And if I brutally characterize the refining industry, it's been very cost focused over recent years, deploying technology that's pretty well known and established, and it's been all about economies of scale and competitiveness. Actually, the industry needs to learn how to experiment and trial some things, not all of which will be successful. The chemical industry's got a far better history of innovation than the refining one. If you look back over the last 40 or 50 years, the refining has been more around efficient capital deployment and economies of scale and brute globalization. That's necessary, but probably not sufficient as we go into the next 10, 20 years. So it's quite a different landscape for some of the refiners.
It looks like Tim has some burning comments to do.
Yeah,
Prompted by Alan's words.
Well, and Vinicius's words. There's this need. The world is changing, like it or not, very rapidly, more rapidly than we're used to in the oil industry. And picking up on Vinicius's words about this need to innovate, it's kind of always struck me. You look at the tech sector, and they've got a very high rate of innovation and product development. And they have this sort of agile mindset, right? They fail quickly, they try things out. Some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. And that's almost the opposite of the oil industry for very good reasons. We are high hazard, high capital cost. Our whole management of change and our design protocols and everything are to make sure that we don't fail, that we nail everything down and get everything right first time. And those two mindsets really don't easily go together well. And the cost of trying and failing when you're talking about actual like steel in the ground is very high. It's not like a piece of software that doesn't work and you rewrite it and try again. So that is a real fundamental challenge. I think as an industry, we need to be more open and more outward looking. We've tended to be in our own little world. We've got our own design standards, our own supply chain, our own partners. There's a lot of refining people are a little bit suspicious even when you start talking to petchem people. And something that we've learned through our kind of high net industrial cluster is we've talked to a much wider group of stakeholders. So if you take, we don't have a supply chain for municipal waste that could be turned into jet. So we've got a partnership there, and somebody else is building that plant, and they've got that new technology, and they've found out where to get the feedstock from, and then we'll share the blend stock, and we may share some of the utilities. Similarly, our hydrogen customers are people like glass manufacturers and a whole range, consumer products, that sort of thing. So it's kind of forced us. It's good. It's forced us to be in partnership with companies that are not traditional partners of oil and gas companies, and I think that's good. We also can't do everything well, and so we're really looking for where does our key expertise and knowledge really help, and I think producing and utilizing hydrogen is one of those things. So the hydrogen production plant is going to be on our site, operated and maintained by us. And what areas are we not so strong, and can we get somebody else to come in and do the innovation and take the risk? If you take hydrogen fired combined heat and power is a good example, and the gas turbine manufacturers talk a good talk about their hydrogen ready gas turbines, but when you actually say, well, I want this NOx spec, they get a little bit quieter. But somebody else can actually, somebody who's more used to the power sector can build and develop the CHP. They can burn our hydrogen. They can provide us steam and power. They can take some of that risk, technical risk, on how the gas turbines are going to perform. And so I think, there's a combination of changing our mindset because we have to, we do have to bite the bullet and do some new things, and we are doing, but also leveraging our partner's ability to do that as well.
Yeah, really, I think really thoughtful observation, Tim. Especially, I like the point that you made of this parallelism or let's contrast between high-tech industry, software industry, let's say, and the refinery industry or chemical industry. So, like fail and learn quickly approach does not truly work or does not easily work, let's put it this way, in a high hazard and high capital cost environment like chemical or petrochemical or refinery industry. That's very powerful message. And the other thing that struck me was what the point that you're making. We are learning to collaborate more in this moment of transformation, right? That we cannot get out of such a we cannot solve the challenge alone. So we need to cooperate with others, and then brings a change of mindset on one side, and on the other side, perhaps unexpected opportunities that you would not have been able to find out in a regular business context. Would perhaps Henk or Vinicius give some further elaboration on these 2 points based on your experience? I don't know who would like to start first.
Yeah, I can. I can start with, because I think what Tim mentioned is very key, and also take in mind that 2.5 years no one was speaking about carbon neutrality, and now we are doing it as one of the key priorities for most of the companies. And if you think about when you're going to build a chemical plant, it will take at least 3 to 5 years to build it. So you need to think about it now, what you want to do, and after 5 years you're starting up. So in that time period, a lot of things can be changed. So we really need to take the proper decisions, and we cannot continue with, okay, we want this plant, so we will run up and we will produce over 5 years. No, we need to work together with all of our peers, our OEMs, the licensors. It's all need to be working together next to having proper support from the governments and to make the infrastructure available for the future. So it's very important. Just want to emphasize that we need to do it all together, and that's not only the industry, it's the whole field of or the whole world need to work on this to make it happen.
Yeah, that's definitely a good remark. I can only subscribe to that. Vinicius, any perspective from your side?
No, I think we are all in agreement here, which may be good, maybe not so good. I don't know, but I think we see from the same perspective. I also know that typically in technology adoption, there is the onus, I think, now is on the technology providers, right, on the OEM, right. I think that coming from that side and getting to the point that you can prove that a lot of the underlying concerns that were raised in here can be addressed. I think it's a way forward. Also, the partnership, a way to actually execute that. Many of the companies in the industry, they have already this concept of pilot plants or pilot refineries, right? Where they can serve as these test grounds for understanding what and how and what does it mean to change a process or to adopt a new technology. In the area that we are a little bit closer to, on the connected worker, for example, we see that before actually putting on actual operations, these pilot plants, they have served immensely as a good test ground for proving the concepts and doing small pilots before taking out there. You have enough time to learn and to improve where it's needed before you can scale it up, right? So I think I like these. It's almost idealistic, Henk, the concept of the whole world coming together to build something here. But to be honest, I feel that if it's not something with that spirit of improving as a humankind, it's going to be always pending more to the skepticism and risk averseness that we see so often blocking any type of innovation. So I think we are in agreement, and just adding to what has been said already.
Well, staying in tune with this collaboration, right? Inspiring vision. Do you see this collaboration with, I mean, classical players, or do you see also what is the role that you see, for example, of really newcomers and startups? Do you have any experience or opinion about how this the collaboration between large corporates or large enterprises and new clean tech company could play out in this transformation journey? I don't know. Perhaps in this initiative in the UK, Tim, there may be also some players of this sort in the consortium or in the initiative in itself.
Yeah, there are in the sort of within the clusters. I mean, we have the University Science Park actually are adjacent to site, sort of integrated with the site, and so there's things going on there. I mean, I think at the hydrogen use and production level, there's quite a lot of collaboration and innovation going on. There's people making various waste things into hydrogen. There's people trying to make stuff out of CO2. So, at small scale, and that's good. Obviously, that's quite positive. I think what's sort of interesting, I mean, we get approached reasonably frequently by startups with something, and an example would be some kind of new carbon capture tech or a CO2 to X kind of product, and they sort of come along with their thing, and the scale of refining is just so outrageously large compared to even other heavy industries, so people are talking, I can capture 1,000 tons of CO2 a year. Well, okay, but our cat cracker, which we can't do fuel substitution on, it's like 1 million tons of CO2, and so their eyes light up. But also, it's totally to make a dent on my emissions. It's hopelessly beyond the scale of these startups, and I can't really. It's very high risk for me to wait 5 years, because this wonderful thing might come on and then they might be able to scale it up. There's a lot of opportunity cost if it then doesn't work. I could have just built a perhaps more conventional carbon capture plant by then. Although that said, we've done feasibility studies on carbon capture with the current kind of well-proven levels of tech. It's too expensive and takes too much energy. That's only going to get built if we're going to use one of the new, more advanced kind of solvents, and if we were, we're really going to have to push the design just to make the capex and opex work. So there's inevitably going to be somebody's going to take some technology risk to make that fly, because it ain't going to fly with current technology, to put bluntly.
Yeah, wonderful words. I mean, capex, risk. Even in for new technology. I mean, a startup in clean tech is not like a startup in software as a service, right? So you need also a little bit more cash to survive and to thrive in the end and to scale. Good observation. So fundamentally, big transformation costs money, yeah, and big transformation in high capital cost industry costs a lot of money. Alan, perhaps from your perspective, do you see, is there enough capital which is pumped into this direction right now? What is your perspective? I mean, from your vantage point, if you look into that.
Good question. I suppose you can answer it in a couple of ways. Is there enough money around? Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
Is there a huge amount of capital being deployed now? No, I don't think so. We're still at we're still not there on the technology readiness scale for things to be deployed at scale, because we're still trying to work out really what works, or what's that incremental next step. And to Tim's point about the enormous scale of the refining industry, yes, it's a behemoth, but that may not be appropriate for the next generation in a circular economy, because if we're just looking at agricultural waste and sort of movement and processing of that, you end up with a natural supply envelope, because if you can't, most of that is arguably material is water, so there's a natural limit as to how far you move it. So we may end up in a world where there are a number of large sort of super site traditional refining sites, but actually then surrounded by a whole network of relatively small mini processing facilities that generate a liquid that then gets further processed. So it ends up with a different ecosystem if we start to think about things holistically. But getting back to Alessandro's question, the refining industry has arguably been trying to become increasingly capital efficient over recent years. You just haven't seen those capital focused businesses, so the international oil companies and the independent downstream businesses, really deploying lots of capital over recent years, because the barriers to entry to refining have been relatively low, and people have built refineries for reasons beyond commercial returns. So it's always been a sector that's kind of struggled to earn a return. If there is, though, if history goes, if there is a technology that's reasonably well understood, there is a market for it, and it's commercially viable, then you can see large amounts of technology being deployed. The classic example is the refining industry goes through huge adaptations. Some of it's regulatory, going to sulfur-free, or sort of huge opportunities. US Gulf Coast refiners investing in cokers because of the rise of Mexican and Venezuelan heavy oil. And so the industry can deploy capital in quite large amounts when it's clear what it's doing and there's a business case for it. And at the moment, I just don't see that, but that doesn't mean to say it will not arise over time. So I see Vinicius was nodding, so yeah.
I think it's not a problem of capital, right? It's a problem of return on investment, or so what are the drivers, right? Beyond just doing the right thing, for example, right? So I think until it becomes very clear that there is a return on investment, it's going to be just something nice to have.
Yeah, I mean, if I just chip in, because we're right in the throes of trying to.
I think that's we still have 5 minutes. We can have or a little bit less than that. We can have some closing remarks on this. I mean, the topic of return on investment, clarity of the frame. I don't know, Tim, Henk.
Okay, I'll make one. Yeah, shall I make one comment? Just to my closing remark would
Tim.
be, I think that there is money. We're in the process of finding some, and I would argue it's easier for a refinery to get $1 billion to do transformational decarbonisation than it is to get $100 million to build a new hydrotreater. So I think the money's there, and the money is seeking deep decarbonisation. The money is seeking the refiners who not just greenwash, have a really credible, even if it's expensive, credible plan. And money for that is more available than money for plant expansions, capacity creep, just the general money you need to keep the refinery running.
Interesting perspective, Tim. Okay. And Henk, you want to say something?
Yes.
To close as closing remark.
I just want to add on the return on investment. Yes, we wish it was so simple nowadays, but which make it more complex is the maturity of the technologies. So because of that, we don't know where we are going to invest in, and how the market will, or the technologies will change in the future. So that's making it very difficult for doing any investment at this point, and to go for the best investment. But also, honestly speaking, not making a decision, not making an investment is also taking a big risk for the future. So if you're not going to do that, you might lose all.
Yeah, high risk environment, definitely, Henk. And in order to take an opportunity out of this risk situation, you need to take your chances, right? And you take some bets. Certainly one aspect which will be helping and will be important to have some more certain regulatory framework around that than what we have today, right? So without that, it's also difficult to take a calculated risk, even more difficult to take calculated risk. And I think this is definitely one important topic that we'll need to find a quick solution in order to set things in motion at a higher pace and dynamics than today, right? Well, I'm really, I think it was a really good exchange with a lot of direct experiences of experienced professionals and companies active in the field or active in this industry from a consulting perspective or market intelligence perspective since many years. I think we can all agree that this is a very, a very exciting time to be in this industry. It's probably not for the faint-hearted, but definitely it's not a boring time. And perhaps the challenge could be also a way to attract talent, which is attracted by challenges, right? And attracted by going to an area of work which will see a lot of innovation coming up in the upcoming years, and creating perhaps a virtuous cycle in refreshing an industry which was perhaps less innovation focused in the past and more focused on efficiencies and the cost efficiency, as Alan and Tim were making before, right? I think it's great. I don't know if Aidan is already on the line and capable to pick us up. And
I am indeed on the line, Alessandro. I was just waiting for you to wrap up. That was a brilliant panel. I think you sort of summed it up really nicely at the end about how, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's it is going to be challenging. But I think it's a positive challenge of what we're sort of going to experience as well. Amazing panel of speakers.